This document begins with a repetition of things that we have already gone through, and then we go into equivalent circuits for induction motor. As you are aware, in the three-phase induction motor, and actually even in the single-phase induction motor, the rotor rotates at a speed which is slightly lower than the synchronous speed. Let's stick to three-phase induction motors for now. We know that the three-phase winding on the stator, whether it's the delta connected or star connected, produces a rotating flux in the inner portion of the stator. The speed of that flux is known as synchronous speed, and I'm denoting it by capital N with a suffix S. The rotor catches up with that speed, tries to catch up with that speed actually, but it never gets to that speed fully. It settles down to a speed slightly lower than the synchronous speed. So the rotor speed is going to be given a symbol capital N. The synchronous speed ns is given by this famous equation which we have seen several times in the past. Other interesting thing here is that the stator frequency and rotor frequency, I'm not talking about speed of rotation of the rotor, I'm talking about the frequency of the EMF generated in the rotor. That frequency and the frequency of the supply, electric supply to the stator, these two frequencies are not necessarily the same. That it will depend on the slip. So the stator frequency is going to be denoted by a symbol F1. In many books, they use the symbol Fs. S means stator. And the rotor frequency is going to be denoted by a symbol F2 here in my notes. In many books, they call it Fr. Not a big issue anyway. So it's a very interesting case that the rotor and stator have different frequencies in general. And not only that, the rotor conductors are short circuited with each other using rings on both sides of the rotor in case of a squirrel cage construction, or using other techniques if we don't have a squirrel cage construction. All that was uh, discussed a lot in the past also. The slip is the difference between the synchronous speed and the speed of the rotor. The relative value of slip S is defined as ns minus n divided by ns, and the percentage value will be this number multiplied by 100. The absolute value, of course, will be ns minus n. Typically, 5 to 10% slip is seen in most induction motors. The equivalent circuit it is drawn per phase, first of all. It looks very similar to the to the equivalent circuit of a transformer. But with a very crucial difference that the secondary winding, which is the rotor side, is short circuited. All you see on the rotor side is the reactance of the rotor winding X2 and the resistance of the rotor winding R2. No load. No load is short circuited. Also, the frequency in the rotor circuit is different from the frequency in the stator circuit. F1 on the stator side, F2 on the rotor side. The The relationship between F2 and F1 is very simple. F2 is relative value of slip multiplied by F1. In the beginning, when rotor is not rotating, capital N is 0. So slip will be 1. Relative slip will be 1. So F2 and F1 will be equal. But as rotor starts rotating, slip will start becoming less and less. So rotor frequency F2 will start becoming lesser and lesser because F2 is S times F1. That is why I am showing two EMFs being produced on the rotor side. One of them is E2 0, which is the value of EMF when slip is 1. That means when the rotor is not rotating at all. And then the actual value, which is denoted by E2. The relation, of course, is simple enough. E2 is S times E2 naught. When slip is 1, that means rotor is not rotating. Both E2 and E2 naught are the same. On the stator side, we begin with the supply voltage Vs per phase, of course, followed by the resistance of the stator, followed by the inductance of the stator, which is actually denoted by the equivalent inductive reactance, X1, and then the core losses, which we are modeling through a parallel circuit as we did for transformers. And the remaining current goes through an ideal transformer, which has E1 EMF on the primary side and E2 on the secondary side. The conversion ratio depends on how much power is lost in the air gap between the stator and the rotor. By default, I'll assume it to be 1, but in practice, it is never 1. It is less than 1 for sure. In fact, it can be a complex number also because you are talking AC here. So roughly, this is the equivalent circuit. RC is the core resistance, core loss resistance actually. XM is the magnetizing reactance as we saw for transformers. X2, okay, there's a typographical mistake here. X2 actually, it's not inductance, it is the inductive reactance of rotor winding. R2 is the resistance of rotor winding. Vs is the voltage applied to stator per phase, of course, and the frequency F1. F1 is the frequency of the three-phase AC supply to the stator. F2 is the frequency of the EMF induced in the rotor. So this is probably self-evident. Again, there is a typographical mistake. X1 is not inductance. It is the inductive reactance of stator. And R1, of course, is the resistance of the stator. Now, this is a very important statement that we should read once again. The equivalent circuit is similar to that of a transformer, since the induction motor can be thought of as a transformer with rotating and short-circuited secondary. Also note that in general, stator and rotor operate at different frequencies, F1 and F2. And F2 is F1 if slip happens to be 1, which is when N is 0. And as far as the core loss in the stator is concerned, we have two currents in the two parallel paths, IW and I mu. The total, of course, will be known as the no load current, I naught. As we saw for transformers. So those things are repeated here. One very important difference here is compared to transformers that the no load current is not that small. In transformers, no load current is not very high, but for induction motors, no load current can be quite high because of the power levels involved. No load current in inductance motors is generally large enough than that in transformers. That means core effect cannot be ignored all the time, most of the time. Now, the operation is repeated once here in plain language. When a three-phase supply is connected to stator windings, an EMF is induced in the short-circuited windings of the rotor. The greater the relative motion between the rotor and the rotating flux of the stator, the larger the value of the induced EMF, which is E2 in the rotor, of course. The maximum induced EMF occurs at standstill, that is when n equal to 0, because at that time slip happens to be 1. So E2 would be highest, which is actually what we call as E2 naught. N equal to 0 is known as locked rotor or standstill rotor. I think we have used these words for other motors also. If the induced EMF in rotor at standstill is denoted by E2 naught and the induced EMF in rotor at any arbitrary value of n is denoted by E2, then the formula is this, which is already written in the equivalent circuit. The rotor resistance R2 is constant with n, that's for sure. Resistance doesn't change with frequency. However, the rotor reactance L2 will be constant, but 2 pi f L2 will keep changing because F will keep changing on the rotor side, depending on the slip. It's a frequency dependent circuit on the rotor side. Slip dependent circuit actually. The rotor reactance is given by this formula, 2 pi F2 L2, where L2 is the inductance of the rotor and F2 is the frequency of the EMF in the rotor. But F2 happens to be SF1. F1 is fixed, it will not change. That is the supply frequency for the stator. But F2 will keep changing depending on slip. So X2 will keep changing also with speed of rotation of the rotor. The equivalent circuit has to take care of that. We can write rotor reactance as 2 pi F2 L2 and F2 is SF1. So we can write the same thing as 2 pi SF1 L2. And if I define 2 pi F1 L2 as the value of X2 at standstill and denote it by X2 0, then I write X2 as S times X2 0. X2 0 is the standstill value of the rotor reactance. Okay, so try to understand the equivalent circuit once again. Its application is going to be quite important for us. Essentially, this is what we will be using to make all the calculations in the three-phase induction motor. The variable frequency on the rotor side has to be kept in mind. At n equal to 0, both the stator and the rotor frequencies are exactly the same because slip happens to be. Now, obviously, on the rotor side, the total impedance is R2 plus JX2. And on the stator side, it is more complicated, of course.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, sorry to disturb you in the middle, sir.
Sure. Yeah.
Could you please confirm the syllabus for our quiz on 13
It is all
for
DC
the
machines. It's on DC
DC,
machine. Yeah.
the generators and the motors?
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. Yes.
Assignment 3A completely.
Yeah. Basically, that's it. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
no part of assignment 4.
No. No.
Yes,
No.
sir.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Nothing. It's purely DC machines.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Good. Good. Okay. So let's get back to application of equivalent circuit. It's very good to talk about theories, but unless you start applying those theories, you never get the feel for all this. Okay, this is a problem that maybe we have seen in the past, but let's go through it once again. A 208 volt, this is line to line volt, line to line voltage rather. 10 horsepower, 4 pole, 60 hertz, Y connected induction motor. Obviously, it's three-phase induction motor because they are telling you Y connected. Has a full load slip of 5%. Calculate the synchronous speed and the rotor speed at full load. It should be very easy. Synchronous speed is 120 F by P. Right, I've given you that formula today, once again, for the sake of completeness. 120 F1 by P actually. The stator frequency counts, not the rotor frequency. Okay, so F1 is 60 hertz. Number of poles is 4. So 120 into 60 divided by 4. That should be NS in RPM. And the slip is given as 5%. That means 0.05 is the relative value of slip. So once you know NS and you know slip at 0.05, you use this formula to calculate N. This is how we solve such questions. Let me see the solution here. Yeah, it's right here. NS is 120 into 60 divided by 4, which is 1800 RPM. Of course, small ns means RPS. That will be 1800 divided by 60, 30 RPS. Slip is ns minus n divided by ns, and it is 5 divided by 100, which is 0.05. So plug in from there all the values. You calculate n, 1710 RPM. Now problem 2, for the motor in problem 1, calculate the rotor frequency at the rated load. Rotor frequency is S times stator frequency. S is 0.05 and F1 is 60 hertz. So 0.05 into 60 will give you rotor frequency in hertz. Yeah, right here, 3 hertz. Problem 3. For the motor in problem 1 and 2, calculate the shaft torque at the rated load. So first thing you need to know is the output power, which is given as 10 horsepower. We are operating at full load. So 10 horsepower multiplied by 746 watts will give you 7460 watts. You know the rotor speed at 1710 RPM. We have just calculated it. From there, you calculate omega and then divide the power by omega to get the torque. Here it is. PM means output power. M generally means motor. So if you want to call it PO or P0, I'm okay with that. 10 into 746 is 7460 watts, fine. And N happens to be 1710 RPM. So 2 pi into 1710 divided by 60 gives you omega M, or omega if you want. And that value turns out to be 179.07 radian per second. Divide 7460 by 179.07, you get the total torque produced. This is combined torque of all the three phases, 41.66 Newton meter approximately. So far, you didn't have to use equivalent circuit. Now repeat these problems for delta connected motor. Hmm. I don't think anything would change at all. As far as I'm concerned, everything will remain the same. Yeah, so far whatever we have done applies to both Y connected and delta connected motors. Let's see. Yeah, it's not even written here, but just take it from me that problem 4 means all the answers that you already got in problems 1, 2, and 3. Delta connection or Y connection will not change any of these calculations. They will change only efficiency, etc., and actual currents and voltages when we go into all that. So answer to problem 4 is all the answers in problems 1, 2, and 3. I'm calling it problem 2 again. I don't know why. I suppose those 1, 2, 3, 4 are part of the same set. So I'm grouping all that in a single problem. Second problem is a different kind of problem. So the number given is 2. Sorry for this confusion. Problem 2 has been used previously also, but take that as a group of problems and take this as a separate type of problem. A 480 volt, 60 hertz, 50 horsepower, three-phase induction motor. They are not telling you whether it's delta connected or star connected. A 480 volt, which is line to line voltage, 50 horsepower is the rated output power. Three-phase induction motor is drawing 60 amperes at 0.85 power factor lagging. The stator copper losses are 2 kilowatt and the rotor copper losses are 700 watt. The friction plus windage loss is 600 watt. Core losses are 1800 watt and the stray losses are 0. Okay, so this is a problem which is testing your understanding of the flow of power from input to the output in this motor. You don't need equivalent circuit for this also. You have to grasp the functionality of the motor clearly before you attempt this. Okay. Output power is given as 50 horsepower. So 50 into 746 watts. The first thing we need to figure out is the air gap power, then the power converted, then the output power and the efficiency. Okay, maybe we can go backwards. Let's see. Okay, input power, whether it's delta connected motor or star connected motor, is always given by this famous formula. Square root of 3 magnitude of line voltage multiplied by magnitude of line current multiplied by power factor. So square root of 3 into 480 into 60 into 0.85. That's the input power. Independent of whether it's delta connected motor or star connected. The number turns out to be 42.4 kilowatt approximately. Input power is known. Now, air gap power essentially means from the input power, all the losses in the stator should be subtracted. And a stator has two types of losses. We have seen that in the equivalent circuit already. Copper loss, which is going to be contributed by R1, IS square into R1. That will be the copper loss. And the iron loss or core loss, which will be contributed by the parallel circuit. But they have given you the values anyway. You don't have to make calculations. The numbers are given already in terms of loss power. Get back to this. Yeah. So stator copper loss and minus stator core loss. 42.4 kilowatt minus stator copper loss. Stator copper loss is 2 kilowatt. And stator iron loss is not given, I think. Oh, yeah. Core losses are given. 1800 watt, yes. So we have to include that also. So here we go. 42.4 kilowatt minus 2 kilowatt minus 1.8 kilowatt. That is the air gap input power. That is the power that the stator is trying to couple to the rotor. Not everything can be coupled, of course, I know. But we call it PAG, air gap power. And the number is there. 38.6 kilowatt. Out of 42.4 kilowatt input, 38.6 kilowatt will actually be coupling to the rotor. Okay, so this is how we calculated the air gap power. Now power converted. That's a very interesting thing also. Let's see. Power converted will be air gap power minus rotor losses. And rotor also had core losses, but I guess nothing is given. So we can ignore the rotor core loss, but rotor copper loss is given. That has to be included. Rotor copper loss is 0.7 kilowatt. So converted power will be 38.6 kilowatt minus 0.7 kilowatt, which is 37.9 kilowatt. We are assuming perfect conversion. That means transformation ratio is 1. Nothing is given otherwise. So let's continue to make that assumption. Then what? Output power. Well, we have been given the number, but let's look at the things. Output power will be converted power minus friction plus windage loss and minus stray loss, of course. So 37.9 kilowatt minus friction plus windage loss, which is given as 0.6 kilowatt. Yeah. And stray losses are not there. They are given as 0. So basically output power will be converted power minus all the mechanical losses. That means friction plus windage plus stray losses. Stray losses are 0. So output power will work out to 37.9 kilowatt minus 0.6 kilowatt, which is 37.3 kilowatt. And this works out to almost 50 horsepower, the rated value of the output power. You can check it out. 50 multiplied by 7460 and divided by 1000 should give you 37.3. Efficiency is very easy to figure out. Output power divided by input power and multiply the result by 100. 37.3 divided by 42.4 multiplied by 100, you get the power efficiency, which is about 88%. Okay, now the next problem is if the motor is operating at 10% slip. We are talking about the motor in problem 2, by the way. If the motor is operating at 10% slip and the number of poles in the machine per phase is equal to 8, calculate the torque developed and the rotor frequency. Okay, interesting question. First thing you need to do here is calculate synchronous speed. 120 F1 divided by P. F1 is 60 Hertz, 120 into 60, and number of poles is given as 8. Calculate NS from there. I should have written 120 F1, but I have wrote only 120 F. But anyway, NS works out to 900 RPM. And the slip is given as 10%, which means 0.1 in the relative sense. So you can easily figure out the rotor speed as 0.9 times NS, 810 RPM. Omega is of course easy to calculate by 2 pi n divided by 60. And once you know omega and you know output power already, you can easily figure out the torque. Okay, so this document is done. It's important for you to do these things yourself, you know. Me telling you is one thing, you doing it yourself is another thing. Now the same document continues. This is the second part of the same document. I'm revisiting the equivalent circuit and I will try to make it slightly different. Let's see how. The equivalent circuit I showed in the previous document was almost what I'm showing you right now. But on the right-hand side, you'll see some difference. Let's see how we did that. Okay, let me go back to that previous document. Maybe I'll explain from there. This was the equivalent circuit we had agreed to use, right? The rotor current I2 in this circuit will be E2 divided by R2 plus JX2, right? And E2 is S times E2 naught. So rotor current will be S E2 naught divided by R2 plus JX2. And then I divide numerator and denominator by S. So I'll get E2 naught divided by R2 upon S plus J X2 upon S. Okay. And X2 is S times X2 naught. You will have to revisit all this if necessary. Yeah. Just a bit. X2 is S times X2 naught. So S will cancel out. Based on this, and I think I'll explain in the other document also, based on this, we have modified the equivalent circuit a little bit. On the secondary side, we have written this. What I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to make rotor work at the same frequency at which the stator is working, in the equivalent circuit at least. I want to get rid of F2 completely, so that it's easier to apply the equivalent circuit. Now you see on the right hand side, I'm using the value of X2 which is at standstill, X2 naught. So F1 will be required there. And R2 upon S has come in because of the mathematical manipulations. E2 naught is also the value of E2 at F1. That means when slip is 1, F1 and F2 are the same. So this equivalent circuit essentially works at a single frequency F1. Standstill value of the rotor EMF and standstill value of the rotor reactance are being used. So you don't have to worry about slip, except in the value of R2, which has now been modified to R2 upon S. I think I have derivation later also here. Essentially, this formula that you see here, equation 13, is if you multiply numerator and denominator on the right hand side by S, you get exactly what you got from the equivalent circuit that I showed in the previous talk. So this mathematical manipulation helps you in transforming the rotor side of the equivalent circuit to what I'm showing in figure 2. Okay. Of course, other thing that we have done here is that we have moved the core losses in the stator as if they are happening right at the beginning of the supply. That means that equivalent circuit, parallel equivalent circuit, which in the previous document was after X1, now has been moved before R1. This is not 100% correct, but this does not lose too much accuracy, and it simplifies the circuit much more so that we can do analysis easily. Okay, so in this equivalent circuit, there are two important differences. One is that on the rotor side, I've got only standstill values, and on the stator side, I have moved the core effect to the position right at the input supply. That's an assumption I'm making, that it will not change things too much. Now this equivalent circuit works at the same frequency F1 throughout. And it is much better in terms of application compared to the previous one. And of course, air gap effect, etc. are there. E1 and E2 naught ratio, we will assume it to be 1 if nothing is given. Yeah, we are making that assumption. Okay, here the scanning is not very good, but I think I've repeated this same page second time. Okay, so equivalent circuit that I showed here, and I'm assuming that the transformation ratio is 1, then you know that for transformers, we can transform the impedance by the square of the turns ratio when the impedance goes from rotor to stator side or from secondary to primary side. So X2 naught will become will be multiplied by the turns ratio square when it goes. If I reflect everything on the stator side, this is a mathematical simplification I'm trying to make to the equivalent circuit. I'm trying to refer everything to the primary side or the stator side. So what has happened is R2 upon S and JX2 naught both have come on the stator side, and because turns ratio has been assumed to be 1, so turns ratio square is also 1. So I'm getting exactly the same values transferred from rotor to stator side. So equivalent circuit can be further modified in this form. So everything is being referred to on the stator side. rotor effects have been transformed to the stator side. If the turns ratio were other than 1, if E1 and E2 naught were not perfectly equal, then that turn ratio will also get into this equivalent circuit. So this is another way of drawing the equivalent circuit. It is called the equivalent circuit of the induction motor referred to stator. And of course, once you have drawn the equivalent circuit, then it's all calculations using basic circuit theory in the complex domain. All the parameters are now on the stator side. Rotor effect has been brought to the stator side. It is obvious now that the stator current I1, actually it's not stator current, it is the current going into the stator after the core effect has been included. But anyway, I1 is shown there, so that I1 is easy to write based on simple KCL or KVL. I've tried to further modify the equation, but you don't have to. You can go directly into numerical calculations once you have drawn the equivalent circuit correctly. Now, if air gap coupling, I have been saying this again and again, if air gap coupling is imperfect, then E1 and E2 naught will not be equal to each other. There will be a turns ratio involved, and the value will be less than 1, and maybe it will be a complex number also, quite possible. We'll assume that it's a real number. Why not? But for now, at least. So if that number happens to be small a, then naturally this equivalent circuit will see, instead of R2 upon S, it will see A square R2 upon S. And instead of J X2 naught, it will see J A square X2 naught. Okay, and then of course the circuit theory will take over. So a lot of equations are given based on that. You can double check them. Now IEEE recommends this equivalent circuit for three-phase induction. Very weird, but that's the way they want it. What they have done is, if you go back to this one, this R2 upon S term has been broken further. Like this. R2 upon S can be written as R2 plus R2 times 1 minus S upon S. You can verify it yourself. So that single resistance R2 upon S can actually be thought of as a series combination of two resistances. One of them R2, which is independent of slip, and the other one is a slip dependent component, which is R2 into 1 minus S upon S. This is what IEEE shows all the time in their publications when it comes to equivalent circuit of a three-phase induction. So essentially what it means is, at the beginning, when slip is 1, the variable resistance will be 0. And you will have only R2 left. As slip starts becoming less and less, this variable part of the rotor resistance will start playing a role in determining the behavior of the motor. At least be aware that IEEE wants this equivalent circuit, not the previous one. Yeah, okay. You can easily work out these equations, I'm sure. These are just details. Theory is not changing now. All these equations are from the equivalent circuit itself. And I'm using this equivalent circuit now, not the previous one. Now, this is a very interesting problem, and I think it's going to need the application of the equivalent circuit. A 460 volt, 20 horsepower, 60 hertz, 4 pole Y connected induction motor has the following impedances per phase referred to the stator circuit. And this equivalent circuit that IEEE shows is actually not referred to the stator. This is showing both rotor and stator side. The one I had shown previously is primarily, in fact, it's fully referred to the stator. But anyway, not a big issue. We will still be able to do the calculations. I'll show you how. R1, that means the resistance of the stator winding is 0.641 ohm per phase, of course. The stator winding reactance is 1.106 ohm per phase. Rotor resistance is 0.332 ohm. Rotor reactance, that means rotor reactance calculated at stator frequency. This is why they are saying referred to stator. X2 not X2, is 0.464 ohm. And of course, magnetizing reactance is also given as 26.3 ohm. So in the equivalent circuit here, only XM is given. RC is not given. So we will assume RC is infinitely large. Its effect is 0. Okay. The total rotational losses, that means mechanical losses, are 1100 watt and are assumed to be constant. Calculate the motor's speed, stator current, and power factor. Assume that the motor slip at the rated voltage and the rated frequency is 2.2%. That means 0.022 is the slip relative value. Long problem and long solution. Frequency, synchronous speed is the easiest to figure out. I'm using F instead of F1 because now everything is referred to stator. So I don't have to distinguish between the two frequencies. 120 F by P gives me 1800 RPM. Slip is 0.022. From there, you can figure out the rotor speed, which I am calling Nm rather than N. You get rotor speed or motor speed at 1760.40 RPM. So part 1 is easy. Rotor speed or motor speed is 1760.40 RPM. Part 2, stator current. Now you will need the equivalent circuit, which we have already drawn. The total impedance on the rotor side will be jx2 naught plus R2 upon S. We have seen it already. Plug in all the values. You will get the rotor impedance as this value, 15.10 ohm with a phase shift of plus 1.76 degree. Okay. Basically, I'm using Z2 as the total impedance on the rotor side. I'm using this equivalent circuit right now. And A is assumed to be 1 anyway, because nothing is given. So this entire thing will go on the stator side unchanged because A happens to be 1. And then it will see this parallel combination of RC and XM. But RC is not there. It's infinitely large. So R2 plus JX2 naught will see JXM in parallel. This is what I'm doing here. Yeah, it's drawn here, right there. Z2 is the rotor impedance transferred to stator. And then I have got the core losses, which are only a pure inductive component. So I'll take the parallel combination of these two. It's a long calculation. You may verify my results. The equivalent of these two impedances in parallel works out to this value 11.05 plus J 6.69, or in polar form 12.92 ohm with a phase angle of 31.18 degrees. Now that impedance will further see R1 plus JX1. I'm trying to calculate the total impedance in the stator circuit. So R1 plus JX1 plus this entire thing that we got will be the total impedance from the stator side. Yeah, Z1 plus Z2M. I'm calling this as Z2M, I think. Anyway, do the calculations. You get the total stator impedance as this value, 14.05 ohm with a phase angle of 33.79 degree. Now it's easy to figure out stator current. Simple Ohm's law. Vs is given, you know Zs, stator's total equivalent impedance, divide the two. Oh yeah, keep in mind, wait a minute. Yeah, you have to be careful in calculating the total stator current, because the total power is square root of 3 VL LIL cos phi. That has to be included. But anyway, let's go further. Then I'll come back to it. Yes. 460 volt is the line to line voltage, and we are given a Y connected motor. So the phase voltage will be 460 divided by square root of 3. It's a Y connected system. This is why I made that correction. 460 divided by square root of 3. The phase voltage will be 460 divided by square root of 3. And then, of course, ZS is there already. So the stator current per phase, of course, is this much. And of course, in case of a star system, phase current and line current are the same. So this will be the line current also. Okay. Now the power factor will be the phase angle of the stator current. Cos of that actually. Okay, so do that calculation. You will get the stator power factor 0.8329. It's lagging because there is a minus sign between 15.72 and 10.49. Okay, you can do the tan inverse operation yourself to get the phase angle of IS, which will be a negative value, of course. The power factor will be lagging, and take cos of that angle to get the power factor value. Okay, there's a lot more. Yeah, for the same motor, output power, output torque, efficiency, more calculations really. Input power is easy to figure out because now we know stator current magnitude. As you can do it from here. It's right there, 18.90. In fact, cos of 33.70 will be this number, 0.832. So calculate the input power from this famous formula. Then losses are given, do the appropriate calculations as we did in the previous problem. Also, I'll leave it to you to go through all these calculations carefully to get the total output power. And then torque is easy to figure out. We have done it several times. Efficiency is also easy to figure out. Okay. Now, there's a formula for torque, total torque produced based on the equivalent circuit, and it is given here. Derivation is straightforward. You calculate the total output power divided by omega, or omega m if you want. You should get this formula. If you're not sure, I can send you detailed derivation later. And to maximize the torque, they carry out this operation. And it is found that torque is maximum in this motor when slip happens to be R2 divided by X2 naught. I don't know whether this can be met in real life or not, but theory says that. In reality, it would be very difficult to meet this condition. And maximum torque, of course, will be when slip happens to be 1. So you can put S equal to 1 in equation 30 to get the maximum possible torque. And assuming that resistance is small enough in the rotor. This is the approximate formula for maximum possible torque in a three-phase induction. So these are the things that engineers do all the time when they are dealing with induction motors. Now, another interesting topic is induction generator. I will not do much mathematics, but I'll give you the basics of it. Induction generators, unfortunately, are not that popular as induction motors are. And in case of synchronous machines, it was the synchronous generator which was more popular compared to synchronous motor. In case of induction machines, induction motor is more popular than induction generator. But even then, let's go through induction generator discussion a little bit. The same construction can be used as a generator also. Okay. You'd supply mechanical input to the rotor, you'll get a three-phase output from this stator. And there are special applications where this is very useful. Induction motor can be operated as a generator. If you have a motor installed, if necessary, you can stop using it as a motor and instead supply mechanical input to the rotor to get the generator operation from the same machine. This is very useful in several cases which are mentioned here. In case of vehicles, climbing hills, yeah, fine. This statement is okay. It has nothing to do with generation of electrical power. Okay. Anyway, the point is that induction generator is possible, whether you need it or not in all cases, but it's there for you to take advantage of in case you want electrical power out rather than mechanical power out. Okay. A lot of details here. You may not be interested in everything. The construction is quite similar. Okay, by the way, you can use the same machine for generating reactive power also, although I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's possible. If you want for whatever reason to generate reactive power only, then also this machine can be used. That much I know for sure. And there's a lot more detail here that probably we don't want to talk too much about right now. So induction generator is possible. And where are they useful? Okay. Induction generator does not need as much maintenance as synchronous generator and not much control also. That is its advantage. But most of the power that we are getting in our homes is actually coming from synchronous generators. We cannot change that fact. Induction generators have their own niche, I know. Okay. In fact, I think induction heating is already available a lot. I'll talk about it if time permits later. But by and large, synchronous generators have taken over power generation all over the world. Induction generators are a newcomer in the field. They find their own niches, but they will not substitute synchronous generators in terms of supplying large powers to the society. Whatever their advantages, they will not be used to replace synchronous generators that we have already installed all over the world. Okay. But theory says that you can use induction machine as a generator for sure. No question about that. A single phase induction motor constructionally is not that different, except that in the stator you have a single phase winding. But the result of that is that there is no rotating flux now. Single phase induction motor is the one you see in your homes. The fans are using it all the time. No rotating flux. And as I had mentioned in the previous lecture that flux that is produced by the single phase winding on the stator alternates polarity continuously. North pole becomes south and south becomes north continuously at the frequency of the supply. That flux, although it's not rotating, in theory it can be thought of as the algebraic sum of two oppositely rotating equally strong fluxes. That is called rotating flux theory. And although we saw that for three-phase induction motors, the starting was automatic, for single-phase induction motor, starting is not automatic. Rotor does not start by itself. What we do is, out of the two rotating fluxes, we weaken one of them to begin with, so that the rotor starts moving because of the effect of the other rotating flux. And once the rotor starts rotating, even if you remove the extra winding that you used in the beginning, the rotation continues to happen. That's the simple theory. Let's go through this PPT. This may explain things a little better. The single-phase induction machine is the most frequently used motor for refrigerators, washing machines, clocks, drills, compressors, pumps, and so on. The single-phase motor stator has a laminated iron core, of course, we know that, with two windings arranged perpendicularly. One is the main single-phase winding. The other one is the auxiliary winding or starting winding. This helps in weakening one of the fluxes to begin with. And we energize auxiliary winding in the beginning, and we de-energize this winding as the motor picks up speed. This is how starting is done. Stator of a single-phase induction motor looks like this, quite similar to what we saw for three-phase machines, except that the winding is single-phase, not three-phase. Okay. Squirrel cage construction is normally used in this case. Bars are there, not thin wires on the rotor, but solid aluminum bars are there, which are short-circuited at both ends, as we have seen for three-phase machines. This is the squirrel cage construction. Okay. A lot of detail there. These are the short-circuiting rings on both sides. One is here, one is on this side. The rotor is in the middle. Actually, rotor is the bigger part. The shaft is in the middle, which is the mechanical output to which the fan is connected in your homes. Okay. Operating principle I've already told you about. Double revolving field theory is the one. Forget cross field theory completely. It's very complicated. Double field revolving theory is that the non-rotating flux can be thought of as the sum total of two oppositely rotating fluxes. There's no time to do mathematics here. Yeah, this is what I was telling you. Mathematically, the pulsating field or pulsating flux can be divided into two fluxes which are rotating in the opposite directions. Okay, there's a lot of theory here. We just don't want to go into that. I'm trying to be a bit superficial here. Okay. Slip, etc., are defined in the same manner in which we defined the slip for three-phase motor. Equivalent circuit, I'm not going to go into. EG, but if you know three-phase induction motor equivalent circuit, single-phase induction motor equivalent circuit is very easy to fit. So virtually the same thing. Okay. Input power, all those things can be done once you know the equivalent circuit. This characteristic is very important. You will see that maximum power is produced at a certain motor speed. After that, the power falls very sharply. There is a mathematical proof for this also. The maximum torque or maximum power would occur at a certain optimal value of the rotor speed. Starting torque is not very large, that I know for sure. To rotate the rotor, we need rotating flux. That's why we weaken one of the two rotating fluxes so that the rotor starts rotating. I told you several times. They are writing the same thing here. Okay, let's move forward. What I really wanted to show you was the pictorial diagram. At the yeah, this is how the fan looks like. If you open the fan in your home, this is what you'll see. It is called shaded pole construction because part of the pole is shaded by a coil. It's a commercial name. Main winding and auxiliary winding are there. Auxiliary winding initially is energized so that the rotor starts, and then slowly it is de-energized as rotor picks up the speed. AC machines by themselves are a full 40 lecture course. In this course, it was not possible to go that way. Now, there's a lot more, but I think I'll avoid this. Okay, one interesting quick PPT before I close induction motor discussion. Professor Ray has prepared this very interesting PPT on induction motor. Induction motors are also called as asynchronous motors because they are not synchronous. In fact, induction machines are called asynchronous machines. Okay. A means non, NON. Lot of things that are given here are repetition, so let me not do everything in detail, but there may be something new here. Induction motors are very popular. You see that in this slide. Both single phase and three phase versions are popular. Single phase versions are generally more for domestic use. Even in industry, you see them a lot. But three phase definitely will be much more preferred in the industry. Lot of practical applications, mixer, conveyor, etc., etc. Okay, well, avoid theory. We have seen construction in many other PPTs. It's repeated here. Squirrel cage, you have already gone through, but they are showing that again here. Let me see if there is something new here. Yeah, this is how the nameplate looks like. You may not be interested too much, but I'm showing it to you anyway because it's there in the PPT. This is a famous formula. We have already gone through it. Slip, etc. We have already defined. Principle of operation, we have already gone through all this. Equivalent circuit, I have already done in my own notes. This author is also doing the same thing with slightly different notations. Yeah, this is the IEEE recommended circuit. Yeah, I was showing it to you in my own notes as well. The resistive part has been broken into two different things. Right here. Okay. Analysis, power flow diagram. We have done it in our notes already, but you may want to read this slide carefully later. Efficiency, well-known definition. Torque, well-known. Just seeing if something new is there. A lot of detailed studies are there. Vary this, then what would happen and so on. Okay. So this PPT may be useful for you to have with you for future at least. Now, the purpose of the course was to not only talk about machines, but also talk about power systems. Power systems essentially use these machines, especially generators for sure, on the sending side, and on the receiving side, the customer uses the motors also. In fact, customer uses motors more than the generators most of the time. So coming back to power systems once again, with all this information that we have gathered in terms of machines, is my next goal for the next couple of lectures. Power systems have their own unique problems related both to possible problems and their rectification in transmission lines as well as in the machines as well as in the transformers. As far as transmission lines are concerned, I think we have done a bit already. So this PPT, which I'm going to show you, will probably have things that are partially known to you. But still, this PPT has a lot more than what I have told you so far. It's a long PPT, tells you a lot about transmission lines as well as the power systems. Background material is well known to you. You know all this, how basic equations for voltage, current, etc. So let's pass all that. Yeah, this is fairly well-known things, LTI, etc. You know all this. We know all this circuit theory. I'm trying to get to something which is kind of new to us. Initially, they are reviewing circuit theory here. Now let's come to transmission lines. You know these four parameters of the transmission line, RLCG, okay, which are obtained based on electromagnetics. This is how the power system looks like. I have done this in the past, but I'm repeating it now. You may have a better appreciation of it now. India is full of power systems applying energy to each one of us. Okay, this is of course US, but similar story applies to this country also. Transmission line is a major component, we know that. Transports power, we know all that. Okay, let's not worry. Yeah, okay, simple things. This is how transmission lines are mounted on the poles. These are various kinds of transmission line constructions. I've done this, I think, in another document. Parameters. This is the equivalent circuit of the transmission line. We have done this already in a different document. Let me move forward. Design considerations may be something you want to have a look at. It is not only electrical engineering that matters. Mechanical engineering, thermal engineering, etc. also do matter when it comes to power systems. Environmental effect, mechanical factors, economic factors, of course, that you don't want things to be too expensive. Engineers are experts in science as well as in economics, supposed to be at least. So that has to be captured in the last line. Public is already complaining that we are charging them too much money for electricity, right? So we cannot afford to spend too much money in building transmission lines and power systems. Ultimately, money has to be made enough from the system so that at least we balance the economics throughout. Okay. Lot of details about transmission line construction. You may not want to read everything. Lot of conductor names, etc., etc. Let's move forward. One interesting thing I wanted to show you was lot of formulas for calculating RLGC. Okay. Skin effect, you know this already. The higher the frequency, more is the tendency of the current to stick to the outside periphery of the conductor. Temperature effect on performance has to be modeled. Equations are available. In Kashmir versus in Rajasthan, there will be a lot of difference in the performance. Corona loss. You see a shining light between conductors. This is discharge happening because of the potential difference between conductors. Air gap breaks down. That is known as corona loss. It's a site worth having a look at someday.